There is a piece of code running inside your skull right now that is older than language, older than fire, older than your species itself. I know exactly how that sounds, but every time you feel that hot flash of jealousy, when your partner laughs a little too long at someone else's joke, that code just execute it. It isn't a character flaw, it's a 4 million-year-old survival program. And before this video ends, I'm going to make you watch it run inside your own head. Here's what you've always been told. People cheat because something is broken, because they're unhappy or weak or selfish, because a good person wouldn't and a bad person would. That's the story we tell. Cheating is a moral failure, a crack in someone's character, and if you just found the right person, it would never touch you. But I want to show you something that doesn't fit that story at all. The same ancient force that whispers "stray" into one person's ear also forged the knife that twists in your chest when you're betrayed. The urge and the agony came from the same designer, and that designer was never trying to make you happy or loyal or good. It was solving a cold, mathematical problem about whose genes survive into the next generation. Everything you feel about love, the warmth and the wanting and the wreckage, those are just the tools it used. Don't take my word for it. This runs through the work of David Buss, an evolutionary psychologist who spent decades mapping jealousy across 37 different cultures. It runs through Helen Fisher, who slid heartbroken people into brain scanners while they stared at the face of the person who left them. It runs through Robert Trivers, whose single idea from 1972 quietly explains why men and women so often break in completely different ways. To understand why you cheat and why it destroys you when someone cheats on you, you have to go back to a world with no marriage, no morality, and no word for any of this. And what's waiting back there is stranger than any excuse you've ever heard. Let me start with the thing almost nobody wants to admit out loud. For nearly all of human history, sex and reproduction carried wildly different price tags depending on which body you were born into. Think about it in the coldest possible terms. For an ancestral man, a single reckless night could cost almost nothing. A few minutes, and biologically, he could walk away. For an ancestral woman, that same night could cost 9 months of pregnancy, years of nursing, and a long stretch of danger that could get her and her child killed. This is the asymmetry Robert Trivers named, and he called it parental investment. By biology, one sex is forced to invest far more than the other. And when one side is forced to invest more, the entire math of desire changes. Actually, let me show you what I mean. If the cost of a bad mating choice is enormous, evolution rewards being extremely choosy. If the cost is tiny, evolution quietly rewards volume. Over hundreds of thousands of years, those two different price tags carved two slightly different sets of instincts into the human brain. Not identical, not opposite, just different enough to power 4 million years of heartbreak. But here's a question I want you to hold on to, because I'm not going to answer it yet. If men and women were shaped by the very same force, why does the exact same betrayal land in two completely different places in the body? Keep that one in the back of your mind, I'll come back for it. Now, this is where most people get it wrong. They treat jealousy as a sign of weakness, proof that you're insecure, that you just don't trust enough. But jealousy isn't a bug in the human mind. It's one of the most sophisticated programs it runs. David Buss calls it a mate-guarding adaptation. Its entire job is to detect a threat to your bond before that threat becomes a catastrophe, and then to flood you with enough raw distress that you actually do something about it. The racing heart, the glance at their phone, the sudden gnawing need to know where they are and who they're with. That is not you losing your mind. That is an ancient alarm system doing precisely what it was built to do, in a body that can't tell the difference between the Stone Age and a Saturday night. And now I can answer the question I left hanging a moment ago. Buss ran a now famous set of studies built around one brutal question. What would torment you more? Imagining your partner having sex with someone else, or imagining your partner falling in love with someone else? And the answers split along a line. On average, men were far more haunted by the image of the physical act, women far more by the image of the emotional bond forming. Why would that be? Because for an ancestral man, the ultimate nightmare was paternity uncertainty, unknowingly pouring years of protection and food into a child that carried another man's genes. For an ancestral woman, the deeper danger was never just the act, it was losing his commitment, his resources, and his presence to a rival, and being left alone to raise a child in a world that punished that. Two different catastrophes, two different alarms, both still shrieking inside modern skulls that no longer live anywhere near the world that installed them. But it gets even crazier, and if questions like this are the reason your brain refuses to shut off at night, subscribe, because what I'm about to show you next is the part that genuinely made me rethink what love even is. Here's the twist. We've been talking about jealousy, the defense, but evolution also built the offense, the pull towards someone new, and it did not build it only in the people you'd expect. For a long time, the lazy assumption was that straying was a male thing, and women were simply the loyal ones being wronged. The evidence quietly dismantled that. Researchers like Marty Hazelton have studied how a woman's attractions can subtly shift across her cycle, and the deeper you look, the clearer a hidden logic becomes. Ancestrally, there could be an advantage in securing a devoted partner to build a life with, while, in rare windows, being drawn toward signals of strong genes elsewhere. It's not romantic, it's not conscious, it's a strategy so old it never needed your permission. And that means the urge to stray was never a defect that infected a few bad people. It was a dormant program written, to some degree, into nearly everyone. The only real question evolution cared about was when the cost of running it dropped low enough to fire. Now stay with me, because this next piece is the one I promised, and it's the strangest of all. Helen Fisher spent her career arguing that what we lump together as love is not one feeling at all. It's three completely separate systems running in the brain, on different circuits, driven by different chemistry. There's lust, the raw sex drive. There's romantic attraction, that obsessive, can't eat, can't sleep fixation on one specific person. And there's attachment, the deep, calm, bonded security you feel with a long-term partner. Here's the part that should stop you cold. Because they're separate systems, they can point at different people at the same time. You can feel profound attachment to the person you've built a life with, while a jolt of lust fires for a stranger, while romantic obsession quietly ignites for someone else entirely, all at once. That's not a character flaw, and it's not a lie people tell to excuse themselves. Neurologically, it is fully possible because these three engines were never designed to aim at a single target. Evolution didn't care about your wedding vows. It bolted three separate machines into your head and left you to referee them for the rest of your life. And this is exactly where the modern world turns the screw. Every one of these programs was calibrated for a small band of a few dozen people you'd know your entire life. Now, they fire inside cities of millions, through glowing screens, past an endless scroll of curated strangers, each one a fresh trigger for machinery that was never built to be aimed at this much temptation. The ancient code isn't malfunctioning. It's running perfectly in a world it was never written for. But here's the catch, and this is the part I saved for last, because it belongs last. If all of this is just cold reproductive math, then why does betrayal feel like dying? Why doesn't it feel like a spreadsheet error? Why does it feel like the floor opening up beneath you? When Helen Fisher put people who had just been rejected into a brain scanner and showed them a photo of the person who left them, the regions that lit up weren't just the sad, quiet parts of the brain. They were the regions tied to physical pain and the regions tied to craving. The same circuitry that roars in drug addiction and withdrawal. To your brain, losing a bonded partner does not register as an inconvenience. It registers as an injury and as withdrawal from a substance you were chemically hooked on. And if you only remember one thing from this entire video, let it be this: that agony is not a sign that you are weak. It is the exact measure of how deep the bond went. Attachment had to feel that overwhelming, and its loss had to feel that unbearable, or our ancestors would have wandered off and let their vulnerable children die. The wound exists because staying together mattered so much that evolution was willing to break your heart to enforce it. The pain isn't proof that something is wrong with you, it's proof that the bond was real. So the same force built both sides of this: the pull that tempts you to leave, and the devastation that punishes you when someone leaves. It handed you the match and the burn in the same breath. Not because it's cruel, because it was never for 1 second trying to make you happy. It was trying to make more of you. That piece of code is still running. Right now, as you sit and watch this, the jealousy, the pull, the ache, all of it. Older than language, older than fire, older than your name. You were never broken for feeling it. You were just built by something that cared about survival long before it ever cared about love. So here's the question I actually want you to sit with, and I want a real answer, not just great video. Think back to the last time that ancient code fired inside you. The jealousy, the temptation, or the ache of being let down. Looking at it now, what do you think it was really trying to protect? Tell me the story in the comments. I read them, and the honest ones stay with me longer than you'd think.